Going to be talking about a oral piercing grouping, cyber bites. This is going to be one of the most extensive videos you're going to find on the internet. Pretty much everything you should know before getting it done, and then some. We're going to cover the pros and cons, the piercing procedure, aftercare, risks, living with the piercing, abandoning the piercing, all that fun stuff, jewelry, everything else. Coming up next on Pros and Cons by a Piercer, Season 2, Episode number 79. For those who are new to the channel, welcome to the Body Piercing and Tattooing channel. Hope you're enjoying the videos. Hope you find them helpful and useful, but you may not know who I am. My name is DaVo. I'm a professional body piercer and have been since 1994. I own and operate the Axiom Body Piercing Studio, located right here in Des Moines, Iowa, inside Skin Kitchen Tattoo. So the piercing we're going to talk about, the grouping, is called a cyber bite. And what it is a combination of two oral piercings or lip piercings. The bottom is done with a labrae, dead center, or a vertical labrae, and the top is a medusa. Now, there can be variations on this, like a jessup on the top or a vertical labrae on the bottom. It is a combination of something basically in the center. This is a completely modern piercing. There's no big fun story behind it. Sorry. Been around for a while. Kind of part of that whole thing that happened in the 90s where people would come in and go, I want one lip piercing here and I want one here. And we go, okay, well, that's two lip piercings. We did two lip piercings. What do you call it? And then the bites happened. Which, yeah, thank you, Internet, for that. Now let's get in the meat and potatoes, the pros, the cons, the advantages, the disadvantages, starting with the pros, the things that make you go, yes, I need that in my life. Starting with number one, long history of healing. This piercing is not, or these two piercings are not experimental. They're not new. They've been around for a long time. They can heal with a little bit of problems here and there, but for the most part, they are going to heal. Number two, for all you people that love symmetry, this is a piercing that kind of draws a line down the center of your face, combined with things like two nostril piercings or two eyebrow piercings can kind of give that flow down to your chin kind of look. It is aesthetically pleasing. Number three, compared to other piercings, this tends to be a quick heal, usually about 8 to 12 weeks tops. This piercing is not a very difficult heal. It can be a little complex, and I'll get into some of the complexities. But usually, if you get past that third week, a lot of that slows down, and when you downsize it, 6 weeks. So it tends to be a very easy, quick heal. Number four, there is a large variety of different types of jewelry choices for this particular piercing. The threaded ends or tops or the threadless ones, I'm kind of still on the fence on threaded jewelry in the mouth, but it can be done, and I've had clients that do wear it. There is a huge amount of different ends that you can put on this that will change what that looks like. Even with the jessup and the vertical labrae, different ends, gem settings, shapes, sizes, etc. It's endless. Just depends on your imagination and what's available. And the last one, number five, this could be combined with other piercings to create kind of a grouping, like I talked about earlier. You know, double nostrils, a septum, eyebrows, also other lip piercings to create a different look, kind of to draw it all together. With all the positives, there's got to be negatives. They're called the cons, the disadvantages, the things that make you kind of go, no, I'll skip that. Starting with number one, risk to gums and teeth in the bone structure inside your mouth. You have a metal object that will have contact, possibly with teeth and gums, throughout the period of time that you have the piercing. I know a lot of people will tell you, hey, you just put plastic in there and it doesn't happen. Reality is hard plastic will damage your gums and your teeth. Sorry. It's just one of those piercings that placement, proper jewelry, and etc. can reduce the risk of these problems, but they are always a risk, no matter what. This piercing can affect eating and drinking for a long period of time. It is in the center of your mouth. It is not going to feel very comfortable to open your mouth wide to eat that giant triple stacked deli sandwich that you just bought. Drinking could be complicated. Either you have to do it either out of the side of your mouth or use straws. This can affect things for a long period of time. Even after it heals, some people have noticed that it still affects how they eat. Number 3, can close very quickly. Oral piercings are notorious for taking them out after 2 years for a couple hours and having problems getting the jewelry back in. Yes, I know, and this person will probably make a comment. There are a select few that can leave the jewelry out for long periods of time and never, ever will that thing close. You are the exception and are probably fairly unhealthy. You need a better diet and you need to take better care of yourself. I know you're only 20, but still. In most cases, and there are those people that just have a tolerance for it, and for one reason or another, your body just never closes piercings. That's an entirely different thing. But you can't take this jewelry out for even short periods of time without the risk of the piercing closing. Number 4, swelling. This piercing will swell like all oral piercings do. You're going to have to adjust your diet for the first 3 to 5 days. You're going to have to adjust or try to cut back on talking. You can't smoke. You shouldn't smoke, and etc. And I'll go into that a little bit more in depth later. But swelling is a big factor with this. It will affect eating. It will affect speech, and etc. And the last one, number 5, oral piercings tend to be one of the most noticeable and long-lasting scars of any piercing that you can do on the face. People notice this piercing long after you abandon it. Partly because of where it's located at. It's easy to pick up on, but this piercing may look open for years after you've taken the jewelry out. Preparing and what you should know before you get it done. First one, if you're employed or involved in any type of organized activities like sports, acting, what have you, and there's a dress code, chances are you're not going to be able to have this jewelry or these piercings in while being a part of that. Make sure that you check with those in charge that it's going to be okay, because nothing is worse than getting 2 new piercings that look incredible and then going to the first practice or rehearsal or what have you, or back to work and being told, no, you have to take that out now or just go home and don't come back until you take them out. The second thing you should consider is the piercer you choose should be well experienced, informative, professional, make you feel comfortable, should give you a consultation that covers many of the things we're going to talk about later, things like risks, what it's going to involve the healing, talking about swelling, and should take a look at your anatomy and be able to evaluate it very quickly to know whether or not that piercing is going to work for you. This kind of goes back to choosing your piercer, but the jewelry should be made of a biocompatible material and be of high quality. It also should be sterilized before it's used. And that doesn't mean dumping it in a magic liquid for 10 minutes. That means autoclave. Repeat after me, autoclave, where it's put in a sterilizer and sterilized before it's inserted in your body. These piercings will demand isolation. Prepare ahead of time. You can't sleep on them. You want to avoid contact with food items, etc. So it's one of those things you want to plan ahead for and have that kind of a game plan for avoiding contact. I'll go into this a little bit more in depth later, but you're going to have to practice cross-contamination prevention. And what that is a lot is changing habits and avoiding certain items and things. And we'll get into that a little bit later, but it's something you really do need to consider beforehand, that this may change your lifestyle in some way, shape, or form. The next thing to consider is, does your piercer actually go through aftercare instructions with you verbally? Do they offer written instructions, and do they have aftercare products on hand? I don't understand this whole thing with people in the industry not taking the time to educate their clients. What I generally, or what you should expect, is during the consultation, a majority of the activities that are going to be avoided, like cross-contamination prevention, what you're going to actually have to do to clean the piercing or remove the discharge, and any type of problems with swelling, things you need to cut back on, that sort of stuff. All that stuff should be covered in the consultation. Then afterwards, they should explain how you clean it and give you a few hints here and there. I know it's easy to go, oh, they just need to read the aftercare instructions, but the reality is maybe they have a question, maybe something's not clear, and going through that verbally with the client allows them to ask you questions and kind of butt in when something doesn't seem right to them or they're not quite sure what you're talking about. So it's always important that your piercer does do that. Ask them in advance if they do that. This jewelry will more than likely need to be downsized. We always pierce for swelling piercings, just a little bit oversized, sometimes a little bit more than a little bit, just to make sure that the piercing doesn't impact. You will need to downsize this jewelry to a shorter post in roughly about 6 to 8 weeks, maybe sooner. So do take that and plan ahead and plan on coming back to that piercer within probably anywhere from about 6 to 8 weeks, maybe sooner. This will affect your diet for a while. So it's a good idea to go ahead and buy soft foods, things that are easy to eat, things that are maybe cold, avoid hot items, and straws, smoothies, etc. Have that stuff on hand, baby sauce or baby food. Have that stuff on hand ahead of time so you're not having one more errand you have to do after getting the piercings done. Now let's talk about the piercing experience itself. Pain level on this is anywhere from about a 2 to a 5. And I say that some of them I hit at high 5 mainly because you're doing 2 piercings. You can break this up into 2 separate piercings if you wish. Do one, heal it out, then do the other one. The thing with additional piercings in a setting is each time your body kind of registers the pain a little bit more intensely. It's like the first time it goes, hey, you don't want to do this. Second time it's like, you really don't want to do this. And by the third time, it's like, you need to freaking stop. So it kind of raises that pain level. First thing we do is do a consultation. Check the anatomy, go through the risks, everything else. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to select the jewelry. This one, both of these, if we're doing the Medusa and Labret, of course, they're flat back Labrets or Labrettes. Not going to go into it. If we're doing a Jespit, why can't I pronounce it today? If you're doing a curved barbell, there needs to be a curved barbell for the vertical style. Then comes setup. Oh, you got to fill out the waiver too. They'll set up their equipment, get everything ready for you, and then they will disinfect the area and mark each of the piercings. When you're looking at the markings, I highly suggest that you look at them up close and look at them at arm's length. When you're up close, it's things can kind of look a little off, but when you get at that arm's length where normal people see you from, it may, even if it's perfectly straight, it may look off. So you kind of want to have that visualizing of at least arm's length. If you need adjustment, have them do it at that point in time. It's always easier to move the mark than it is to re-pierce, especially when we're talking about small little areas. If you do a piercing and then try to come back like before that wound's healed over, it sometimes will slide right back into that old piercing position. Also, bring a friend for moral support and to be your second. Have them take a look at it and see what they think. I do this one with forceps. They can be done free-handed. Personally, I like forceps just basically because it's easier to draw put the tissue in the position I want and line up the needle. Inject in and through. Usually, then we remove the forceps. The needle's pushed out with a guide pin. The threaded jewelry is threaded onto a guide pin, pushed through. Guide pin's taken off. I'll use hemostats to hold the post just to make people get tired of having my big mitts inside their mouths. So hemostats on the outside kind of works really well. And then thread the jewelry or put the end on. Clean up or stop any bleeding. Sometimes you have a little bit of minor bleeding. And that's mainly caused because the guide pin is tapered. So sometimes there's kind of a period where there's less, what's in the piercing is not as thick as the jewelry. So it'll cause a little bit of bleeding. Usually stop any bleeding. If there is any bleeding, it usually lasts a few minutes. I'll usually have Biotine on hand if it got in their mouth so they can rinse. Because blood tastes great. Sometimes there'll be a little bit of throbbing and aching immediately after the piercing that lasts a few minutes. It is going to be sensitive touch for a while, so don't touch it. It's your body saying don't touch it. Jewelry will be loose fitting on purpose. And the reason why we do that is to allow for the swelling. We hope that you don't swell that much, but just in case, it's better to have it too long than too short. Because if it's too short, you'll create a situation where it swells beyond the length of the jewelry, and the piercing still continues to swell more because the jewelry's too small, and the jewelry's too small because it's swelling. Now let's talk about healing. Average healing time on these, I would give 8 to 6 weeks. You can kind of break it up into 2 parts. Usually the inside will heal out in about a week, or about 2 to 3 weeks. So you take care of them a little bit different. On the outside, clean twice daily using a sterile saline spray. I like Neomed's Piercing Aftercare. Comes out in a fine mist. You just spray it on there and leave it alone. There are other products on the market that you can find. The main things you want to look for is that it is in a metal can. It does say sterile on it. And when you turn it over and look on the back, it says, ingredients-wise, purified or some type of purified water, and then sodium chloride. No preservatives, nothing else. If it does, put it back on the shelf and get something else. Now, how that delivers can affect how you use it. If it's a mist, just mist both or mist the piercings. Let it stay in contact for 5 minutes. If there's any excess, you can pat it dry. Otherwise, leave it alone. Do that twice daily. If it comes out like a squirt gun, it might be a little too powerful to squirt or spray directly on there. You can do compresses where you take a sterile gauze, spray the saline on until it's damp, and then lay it against the area for about 5 minutes, twice daily. The other thing I would suggest is at the end of your shower, tilt your chin up and let the water flow over the area for about 30 seconds. What you're doing with these two things, the saline and the shower, is you're removing that discharge that hardens and crust on the jewelry, the crusties. The reason why I want it off there is when it moves and shifts, it can agitate the piercing, which could lead to problems. It also doesn't feel very good, and you may need additional room on that jewelry for your body to produce more. We don't want it blocked. If you feel like you have an excessive amount of it or it's just not coming off, see your piercer. Let them clean it. Let them take a look at it because there might be another issue going on. Do not run to the medicine cabinet and start pulling out everything tipped in cotton with a sharp point or edge or was suggested by a stranger on the internet and start digging around. You are going to cause problems more than likely. The other part for the inside, I suggest rinsing twice daily with an alcohol-free antiseptic mouthwash. I like Biotin antiseptic. It kind of helps with the dry mouth that some people experience with this piercing. The other thing is doing warm saltwater rinses a couple times a day for about 3 to 5 minutes. A good mixture would be about 1/8 of a teaspoon per cup of warm water. It's always best if you use distilled and heat it up in the microwave, but you can use tap water. Basically, if it feels good, do it, as long as it feels good. And that's more for comfort than anything else. Swelling can last anywhere from 3 to 5 days. With this piercing, it tends to start the second day for some reason, usually first thing in the morning. You can reduce the amount of swelling you see by cutting down your intake of tobacco, alcohol, cannabis, hot and spicy foods, things that are extremely warm in temperature, vaping, or anything that agitates your mouth. Think citrus, anything that's acidic. If it burns or hurts to eat it or ingest it, don't do that. Soft and simple foods for the first 5 to 7 days is a good idea. Things like baby food, applesauce, yogurt is fantastic. Smoothies are incredible. Cold items like popsicles and ice cream bars, etc. Anything that you can just basically put in your mouth and melt is going to be great, and it's going to feel great because it's cold. Another way of using cold is for that first roughly about day and a half is gently sucking in ice chips for the first 24 to 28 hours. Good idea, hit a convenience store, buy a giant cup of crushed ice, just keep it in the freezer, and just kind of suck on it throughout the day. Staying hydrated also helps, especially throughout the night. If you can get up and get a glass of water throughout the night, that is going to help with that swelling. Limit the amount of movement of the piercing in the jewelry. If you can spend a couple of days not gabbing a lot, not eating things that require you to open your mouth a lot, and just kind of relaxing, that's going to reduce the swelling. Avoid contact of any kind. Don't play with it. Don't spin it. Don't rotate it. Don't move it. All those things are going to lead to more swelling. Another thing you do is sleeping, especially the first 3 nights, with your head elevated above your heart. That reduces the amount of blood flow to the area, which will help with the swelling. Now, I've heard mixed things on this from past clients, but straws seem to be the way to go when it comes to drinking things. They are right there in the center, and drinking things normally like you do from a cup is not going to be comfortable for a while. It might take a little bit of adaptation to get used to doing again. So invest in some straws. Keep it around the house, a metal straw that you clean and disinfect. Get a couple of them so that you can clean it, disinfect it while you're using the other one. You know what I mean. Must practice cross-contamination prevention. Clean your hands before you handle it. Only handle it by the ends whenever possible. Really, the only time you need to have any contact during the healing process with this particular piercing or these particular piercings is when you're checking the tightness of ends, if it's threaded jewelry. Otherwise, leave it alone. No oral contact, kissing, or deep mouth kissing or sexual contact until, I would suggest waiting at least 3 to 6 months. Understand, if you switch partners, you need to practice safe sex the way you're supposed to, which means if you partake in oral sex, use a latex barrier. Keep your environment clean. Clothing, bedding, towels, anything that may come in contact with the area needs to be cleaned on a regular basis.
No swimming. If you can find a body of water that is big enough for you to submerge your whole body in it and move around, it's going to be filled with microorganisms. And the piercings in this case are going to be an open wound. So do not submerge the piercing in bodies of water you can't control the quality of. Now, there might be a reduced risk the further you get into the healing process, but it is still an open wound. Keep pets away from it. Don't let them sleep in the bed with you, especially those smaller animals like to sleep up by your face and steal your breath and your soul while you're sleeping. Keep your utensils clean. Do not share food items with other people. Avoid playing with the piercing, spinning it, rotating it, moving it, touching it to see if it still hurts. All of those things can lead to infection and prolonged swelling and all kinds of other problems. The reason why it hurts when you do that is your body's telling you, stop messing with me. For 3 to 5 days, you can expect a slight off and on bleeding, possibly pretty low on that one. Also redness, discolorization, heat, tenderness to the touch. Those are all common things that will happen in those first 3 to 5 days. Avoid contact or trauma. If it hurts to do something, don't do it. If it hurts to have something up against it, keep it away from it. If it hurts to make certain movements, try to avoid doing that. The other thing is downsizing. I really suggest downsizing this piercing in 6 to 8 weeks. If you are catching this on your teeth, one of the piercings or both of them, talk to your piercer. If you're past the swelling point, downsizing sooner might be a better option. Leaving that longer barbell is just going to, or labret in there is just going to increase the amount of contact it's going to have with your teeth and your gums. Now let's talk about the type of jewelry that I generally suggest for this. We don't want anything that is thinner than 16 gauge. One thing you do want to take into account is the thicker the gauge, usually the more pronounced the scarring is going to be or the more noticeable it's going to be. So if you're one of those people, it's like, well, I'll have it for now, but I don't want to have it later. You might want to consider just sticking with 16 gauge jewelry. Threaded or threadless labret stud is your best option for medusas and labrets or labrets. Vertical labrets and jessops. Both of those curved barbells. Titanium is your best option. It should be a biocompatible material in both cases. Also internally threaded if it is threaded. If it isn't internally threaded, it's probably either an outdated piece or it's something I've been sitting on forever. It has kind of been a standard in the body piercing industry since the 90s to have jewelry, when it's threaded, be internally threaded. If you're confused about what it is, this is the difference. Internally threaded, the ball or end works like a screw. It screws into the post. Externally threaded jewelry, the ball acts like a screw and the post is like a bolt and it screws onto the post.
Internally threaded is better because it's usually a better quality piece of jewelry. You can turn, there's more turns for it to loosen up. It doesn't strip out as readily, and it doesn't do that rubbing and agitation when you change the jewelry. Avoid sharp edges or points or ends that have that. They're going to get caught on things or catched on things or just going to be uncomfortable. Simplistic is usually best during the healing process. As I mentioned before, downsizing in 6 to 8 weeks to reduce the amount of contact that you have with teeth and gum, also to make your life easier. If the jewelry is threaded, I really advise checking the tightness of the jewelry weekly, just to be on the safe side. They can unscrew on their own. They usually fall off at the worst possible time, like when you have a mouth full of food. Always, especially during the healing process, monitor the inside of your mouth. If it's done with the flat back labrae, make sure that the tissue is not starting to grow over that, especially if you've seen an excessive amount of swelling. Just check it on a regular basis. We don't want that problem where it grows over it. Usually it doesn't, but in some cases it will, and some people are more prone to it for whatever reason. One thing I forgot to cover when I was talking about healing is it is common for a white ring of tissue to form on the inside of your mouth around the piercing. That is scar tissue. It's also not common for the stuff that hangs off of it that has kind of a consistency of snot, yellowish often in color, looks gross. What it is it's the same discharge your body produces on the outside of your mouth, except on the inside of your mouth, instead of hardening and crusting on the jewelry, it forms in these long strings because it's warm and moist there. Leave it alone. It'll fall off on its own probably the next time you rinse or eat something. It's not a sign of infection or other problem. The other thing is nesting. Sometimes with these, you'll have a little bit of an indentation that the jewelry will create on the inside. This is not a problem. It's helping to keep that even further away from your teeth and your gums. The only time it's a problem is when the tissue around it starts to grow over it. So if you start to nest, don't be really concerned, but check it on a regular basis. Now let's talk about living with a cyber bite or grouping. First off and foremost, check the tightness of the jewelry on a regular basis. If you have threaded jewelry, I suggest once a week. Pick a day of the week, Tuesday's ball check day, and check it every week just to be on the safe side. The next one, avoid stress and trauma to the piercing, even after it heals. We often think that once piercings have healed, nothing's going to cause problems. The truth of the matter is obsessive contact or trauma can damage the piercing and can create some situations that you don't want to go through. So always kind of isolate the piercings even after they've healed. If you notice swelling or discomfort, contact your piercer and have them take a look at it. Leave the jewelry in at all times. I already mentioned this, but these piercings will close in some cases within an hour. It's a good idea only to take the jewelry out to replace it with something else. Always leave something in it if you want to keep the piercing. Brush the piercing jewelry on a regular basis or rinse with an anti-plaque rinse to remove or reduce the likelihood of plaque building up on the jewelry. This will happen on the inside. It's not a bad idea to brush them occasionally and just keep an eye on it and cut down that plaque. Whenever with a new partner and you guys are going to try out something oral, as in sex, use a latex barrier. Practice safe sex the way you're supposed to. You are more acceptable to it even long after the piercings have healed because of the activity we generally do and the possibility of causing a slight tear. And then you have an exchange of bodily fluids and the possibility of a pathogen working its way into that and then causing an infection in a healed piercing. Now I'm going to go briefly over what you should do if you think you want to abandon it or you're just done with them. If the piercing is healthy, if there's no signs of infection or other problem, even if it's healing or not healing, removing the jewelry should not be an issue. Just take it out. Take the jewelry out and the piercings will close. If there are signs of infection or issues, consult your piercer or a medical professional before removing the jewelry. We do not want to create a situation where we're trapping an infection inside that piercing that's going to require medical attention later on. The piercing will probably appear open, both of them, for a long period of time. Even after you remove the jewelry, there'll be a small indentation scar about the size of the thickness of the jewelry. This should fade over time, but it's going to look open. It's going to be noticeable because on your mouth, it's something people see, they're possibly the first thing they see. So understand that going in and understand that's the case. Lastly, some people will comment or ask about when they squeeze them, an abandoned piercing, all this yellowish, gunky stuff comes out that smells funny. That is sebum. Sebum is a waxy oil that your body produces. It collects in tight crevices and etc. It can tend to collect, has an odd odor to it, and it's completely harmless. It does two things. It lubricates your hair follicles, and it also helps make you waterproof. Not anything you need to worry about. I don't know why you're squeezing the piercing in the first place. Just leave it alone. It'll wash off. No big thing to worry about. Well, that's it. Do you have this particular piercing grouping? Do you have cyber bites? What was your experience like? Are you thinking about getting them done? What are your questions? Did I not cover something? Leave a comment. Till next time, here's hoping your piercing seal with ease and without a single issue. And if you're in the Des Moines, Iowa area, I hope to see you for your body piercing needs in the future. Have a good day, everybody. Take care, and check out this other video.